often to even though I went to UCLA to study film, I didn't come very often to the West Coast. Most of the time I was working in DC or New York. I lived in São Paulo, Brazil. I was born and raised there. My parents moved to the country first in the early 60s, then 67 they moved there. I was basically raised there and had the opportunity to come study film here in the US. I think we can have it on, until like the, so I started to feel that it was interesting to talk about superheroes and spirituality at a moment in my life when I was in Haifa, and I had an opportunity to get together with Mr. Dunbar, who lives close by. At that time we were serving there. I was working at Workshop, which is, I don't know how many of you have been in Haifa or served there. How many people served in Haifa before? So, I was in Israel serving there, and it was very interesting that as Baha'is we pay attention to how there is a connection in everything in this world, and that sometimes that connection is not very obvious because of the layers of dust that settle on history and covered up reality. Baha'u'llah says that God has left a sign of himself in every created thing. And it is our duty to find out what that sign is. And that sign is everlasting. Basically, it continues to exist. And I always thought, what is the sign of God that is left on a tree, on a bird? What is the sign of God that is left in men? And what are the interactions between all these signs? So I was talking to Mr. Dunbar, and then he told me, we were sitting on the floor in his house, and he said, I see you keep talking about heroes, and you keep talking about these histories that keep repeating themselves. Have you read anything about it? And I was like, no. It said, do you want to know of a person who really would be interesting to kind of know more about? I was like, yes. He says, that guy's name is Joseph Campbell. I would like to ask how many of you know of Joseph Campbell? Like, raise your hand. Okay, how many of you here are Baha'is? Like, just like everybody's a Baha'i here? Okay. And I was wondering, so what's so special about Joseph Campbell? He was a guy who wrote many books. One of the books he wrote that really struck me, it was called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He wrote another one called The Masks of God. And he said that, what we really see of God is never himself, but just some masks that are put in front of his face. Then there was an interview made by a journalist, an American journalist called Bill Moyers. I guess many of you know him. He interviewed him, and the series is called The Power of the Myth. Anyone here in this room has ever seen this? There's a video, whole video. I've watched this countless times, maybe, 12, 13 times in my life, the whole series. And I kept thinking, how was it possible that a genius like him didn't know about the Baha'i faith, first place, and second, didn't see how his discoveries into religion and myths did not lead him to the Baha'i faith. Then I went back to Mr. Dunbar and I said, how's it possible? He said, he passed away. There was not enough time to actually talk to him. But he passed his message to a very intelligent gentleman who, at that time, was a young filmmaker who was looking to create the perfect story. then I was like thinking, how is it possible that there is a perfect story? How many of you, and I want to really interact with you, I'm just going to throw some ideas and I want to hear the opinions and like the feedback of all of you, from the youngest to the oldest people who are in the room. Like, how is it possible that there is a perfect story? A story that when told, if you are in Papua New Guinea, Brazil, Norway, or the US, you would react the same way to that story. You know, we believe that different cultures have different myths and different stories related to these cultures, right? That's what we believe that makes different cultures so interesting. But thinking about the idea that there is one story that pervades all cultures really helps us understand that really we are one. And no matter what kind of culture, what kind of language we speak, we react to the same things because we are human. And that something was ingrained in us when we were born. So I would like to share this quote from the Hidden Words, and I would like to ask somebody to read it for me, if it's possible. Can you do it?
O Son of Light, forget all, save me, and commune with my spirit. This is of the essence of my command. Therefore, turn unto it, Baha'u'llah.
So, from reading everything that Mr. Campbell wrote, Professor Campbell wrote, and then watching all these movies and kind of like researching a little bit, I realized that this was the most important thing that a hero, no matter where he was born, had to remember all the time. Sometimes when I see that, like Jesus Christ or Muhammad or Buddha, they mentioned something and they said, this is really important. It meant that, not that everything else they wrote wasn't important, but we had to pay special attention to that specific point. So if you would forget everything else I said today, I would ask you, I would beg you, especially the young ones, if you can, please pay attention specifically to these words. O Son of Light. And I don't know if Baha'u'llah was thinking of Luke Skywalker when he wrote this. I really don't think so. But he said, forget all save me and commune with my spirit. Forget all save me and commune with my spirit. This is pretty strong. He says, this is the essence. This is the essence of my command. Therefore, turn unto it. I don't know how many times I read this, either in the Bible, in the Quran, or in the Baha'i writings, that it says, this is the essence. So it would be something to memorize and to remember every day. I'm going to jump forward and pretend that Baha'u'llah wrote this to Luke Skywalker. And that out of a sudden, he is in super trouble because the life of a planet depends on him. Depends on him and on his buddies on those starships where, that they're flying, and they need to destroy the Death Star. And they seem to be having trouble making it happen. And Luke's father, Darth Vader, is right behind him, waiting to kill him. I know that for young people who have never watched it, understanding that that your father is after you to kill you is not exactly something you used to. So I'm gonna turn this thing on, and I want you to pay attention, because filmmakers are very smart. So when they want you to pay attention to something, the music pops up and something happens.
I've seen this like a million times probably when I was a kid. When this film came out, I was like 10. And I still get goosebumps every single time I watch it. And I always look at this scene and that moment, that specific moment where he's trying something really hard. He's trying to shoot that Death Star and he feels like he doesn't have the skills, that he's not up to that moment, that he's not ready, that maybe he's too young, that maybe he's not the person to be there. And then he hears that voice from his master that tells him what? Can anyone remember what he says?
Use the Force, Luke.
What else does he say?
The Force is always with you.
The Force is always with you. What else? He says something in the very beginning that is very, very important.
Trust me.
He said, trust me. Who said that? He said, trust the Force. He said, trust the Force. And then he says something else that is very, very, very important.
Turn off your targeting computer.
Are you Shastri's brother? You should, you're in the Silicon Valley. You're not supposed to say turn off your computer. Huh? What does this say? It says trust the Force. What else does he say? Let go. Let go. You think when you're watching something like this, out of a sudden you see that in less than a minute and a half, 90 seconds of film, part of some of the most important teachings of religion, of 5,000 years of religion, have been squeezed into 90 seconds of film. When you see a young guy who's probably in his 20s, early 20s, or like, I don't know, 19, he's driving, he's piloting this amazing jet that flies in space. And the director, who's very smart, and the writer and Joseph Campbell, basically, they squeezed some of the most important teachings of all religions into these 90 seconds. These teachings are, first, help me out. Trust in God. Second, sorry? Forget all save me. What else? Let go. When you say let go, what does that mean? Detach. Exactly. Detach. So you detach from what?
The world and all that is therein.
From the world and all there is therein. What else? Yourself. Why yourself?
Because it's your biggest obstacle.
Because it's your biggest obstacle, yes. So, you see, what else? Like, why yourself is the biggest obstacle you can have if you're using yourself to do it? It doesn't make sense, right? People impose limitations upon themselves. What else?
The ego.
The ego. We're going to talk about the ego. There's like a specific character from Lord of the Rings that we're going to talk that it's super special, and he embodies everything the ego really likes and how he manipulates people. But tell me more.
You have no enemies except yourself.
You have no enemies except yourself. So how does that, like, there were like 3-4 messages on those 90 seconds. But then there is like some sort of, I don't know, paradox? Like, things are not clear. If I can trust myself, how can I make things happen? Does that mean I don't have to study? Does that mean that I don't have to prepare? What does that mean? The Guardian kept saying, always, Shoghi Effendi always told the Baha'is that if you look at yourself and your limitations, the result will be paralysis and despair. Please.
One thing I was thinking of, I was reading the teaching prayer for the Southern States about a year ago, and where it talks about changing a gnat into an eagle, as an example, right? And I was feeling like, well, I don't know if I have it in me to be an eagle. Maybe I could be like a hummingbird or a sparrow or something like very small like this. And then I realized, like, God needs me to be an eagle. I really am a gnat. And like, when you place limitations on yourself, it's as though you're making partners with God, because if we can clear ourselves, right, clear our ego, then we become a tool for God. And this is why I think we don't know what our own potential and our own capacity is, because our capacity is only realized in the sense that we clear ourselves and let God use us.
Perfect. So, the question is, when you say let go, it means that you allow a force much greater than you and your friends in school and everybody you admire in this world together combined to flow through you. And then you become a hollow reed where amazing things can happen. where things you have never dreamed about can happen. And that's where, like, I'm not going to say this because it's in the end, but that's where the secret lies. There is a secret. There's even a word that can be used to unlock that energy. And that word is Ya Baha'u'llah. There is a tablet of Abdul Baha where he describes it. At ABS last year, Mr. Sahba, who was the architect of the terraces, and he built a temple in India, he gave a talk, a very interesting talk, about only that word, Ya Baha'u'llah, and how that word had specific powers that were unlocked if the heart was pure and the person meant to do service at that moment. And how much energy would flow through that person. Shastri, can you read this?
If I turn the lights on.
Yeah. I wanted to make it harder for this.
Never lose thy trust in God. Be thou ever hopeful, for the bounties of God never cease to flow upon man. If viewed from one perspective, they seem to decrease, but from another they are full and complete. Man is under all conditions immersed in a sea of God's blessings. Therefore, be thou not hopeless under any circumstances, but rather be firm in thy hope.
So, what is it that Abdul Baha is saying here? He's repeating some, like, how does he start the paragraph?
Never lose thy trust.
What does Obi-Wan says to Luke when he's inside, like he's having trouble? He says, I can't do this. What is the first thing you would think when you're in super trouble? Like you're in trouble, you think like, this is not gonna end. This is the worst minute, the most horrible moment of my life. What is the first admonition?
Trust me.
Trust in myself. Trust the force. Trust the force. I'm just gonna open a parenthesis that might last 2 hours, but I'll just try to make it really short. A parenthesis of like 2 minutes. You know why George Lucas did this movie, the Star Wars, in space and not anywhere else on Earth?
Because of the limitless potentialities of space.
Exactly. Because of the limitless potentialities of space, and because it wouldn't be attached to one single culture. If you do it in America, it would look like Americans are doing it. If you do it in Iran, you see the Iranians doing it, right? I love when I hear Iranians. Then if it's in India, it will be Indians, you know. So would all humans connect to this? Probably not. Why? Because it would be a barrier. Because many people still in this world see different cultures, different languages as a barrier to connect. So he was very smart. What did he do? He took the story that repeats itself in the islands of the Pacific. It repeats itself in the Amazon jungle. It repeats itself here in the US, in Europe, in Africa. And he took it to space. So if you show this story and the person understands the language and understands what's happening there, he will connect. So there is no coincidence this movie still stands. There's no coincidence Lion King was written in that way. There's no coincidence that Lord of the Rings is written in that way. Superheroes have a very interesting connection to the Force. And we'll try to talk about this right now. What is a hero? Can anybody help me out define a hero?
Someone that has special powers.
Someone has special powers? Can you guys help me? What is a hero? Saves other people?
Hero is someone who does the right thing at the right time.
He does the right thing at the right time. That's pretty tough. I wish I just knew how to do exactly that. I didn't need to be a hero. Do the right thing, the right time, I'll be done. Like if I wanted to ask for superpowers, I would just ask for that. Please?
Someone with insurmountable obstacles.
Someone with, I can't even say that word.
Well, they are surmountable. That's the point of the story.
Yeah. For ordinary people. For ordinary people. What else?
Self-sacrifice.
Self-sacrifice. What else?
Taps into a force that others haven't tapped into.
He taps into a force. Or she. Good. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, because our culture has become very much male-oriented. So, you know, you guys, when we pay attention to religion, thanks for raising that. Like, you know, God talks to humans in very interesting ways. During the time of Abraham, you guys remember how God talked to him? He took his son to be sacrificed at the stone that nowadays it's in Jerusalem. Can you imagine your father takes you to sacrifice you, like sacrifice with a knife? No good idea, right? So he takes you to a stone to sacrifice you. And then God is talking to him at that stone. And then people understood that the Holy Spirit talked to Abraham at that specific point, and they saw the stone as being holy. Later on, we saw Moses. Moses went to the desert, and he spoke to a burning bush. A bush that kept burning and never consumed itself. Even when he was approaching, he was asked to remove his shoes because that was holy ground. And he got close to that bush, and then a burning bush talked to him. Isn't that weird? And that was the voice of God coming out of a bush. Then Buddha heard the voice of God under a tree. Then comes Jesus Christ. How did Jesus Christ hear the voice of God? With a dove. Then Muhammad. Who talked to Muhammad? Gabriel. Angel Gabriel talked to him. You see, it was the stone, then it was a plant, and it was a plant again because sometimes we need to repeat, so God repeats many times because we don't learn the first time. So there was a plant. Then after the plant came the animal. After the animal came a man. And who talked to Baha'u'llah in the Siach, the dark pit where he was put with the other prisoners? A maid of heaven, which is? Please, louder.
A woman.
A woman. So if this is a progression, who talked to Baha'u'llah in the Siach? I can't hear you guys. A woman. What does that mean? I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means. And I guess none of us knows. But if you see a pattern, the Holy Spirit talking to people, and it goes from stone to plant, then to animal, then to a man, you see that the way Abdu'l-Baha describes that these are like the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, man, and then the kingdom of, these people we don't understand in this planet, right? So what is a hero? In classical mythology, a being like my friend Nason, can you help me out with this?
A being of godlike prowess and beneficence, who often came to be honored as a divinity, a warrior, chieftain of special strength, courage, or ability, an immortal being, demigod.
So that's a hero. Wow. If somebody would say that this is a description of a manifestation of God, I wouldn't say no. It's not God, it's a demigod. It's an immortal being. It has special powers. It makes sense, right? My theory when I was reading Mr. Campbell's work is that every hero that was ever created in mythology, every hero that we ever met in this planet is basically constructed after the image of the manifestation of God. Superman, Spider-Man, oh man, Spider-Woman? No. Catwoman? No. Wonder Woman, yeah. It doesn't really work. Well, we have to build something. We have to work on that part. We'll work on this.
Mulan.
Huh? Mulan. Yes. If you say Mulan in front of Persians, they say Mulan. No. No Mulan. So there is an element of, like, for children specifically, for young adults, like, or teenagers. My theory is that young people adore heroes because they're looking for the manifestation of God.
Never thought of that.
I don't know if that makes sense. But the adoration when we are children for heroes comes from the need that was placed in us in an archetypical way to look for the manifestation of God. When I was a kid and I saw like these superheroes performing something and I said, I wish I was like that, I meant I wish I was like the manifestation of God. I wish I was like Jesus. I wish I was like one of these people. In this revelation, things have changed because we don't aim to be like the manifestation of God. We don't aim to follow his footsteps. That's beyond everything we can ever conceive. God has created something new. Has created a special being called Abdu'l-Baha. And it says he's not a manifestation of God, but he is the person. He is the ultimate hero. And then this culture, because of how the influence of the world is and the spiritual world is in this world, created figures like that resemble Abdu'l-Baha that we love. I remember when I was a kid, we were teaching at the Baha'i Center, and I was taking care of teenagers. I was 17. I was taking care of like 13-year-olds. Then the people were like, my sister was taking care of the younger, and there was like a friend of mine who was taking the really young ones. And he asked a 3-year-old, who was that person on the wall at the Baha'i Center? The kid looked at the wall and says, oh, I love him. It was Abdu'l-Baha. She was like 3 years old. And he says, so who is him? And the kid said, oh, it's Santa Claus. And I remember at that moment it became clear how the influence of the spiritual world is strong in this world, that even when we don't know, naturally we are drawn to certain images that will resemble what we should look for, especially with the pure heart of small children. And they can perceive so much that we can't because we have lost that capacity. Abdu'l-Baha says that the strength, like he says, the purity of the child is based, the innocence and purity of a child is based on weakness. The purity and innocence of an adult is based on strength. I don't know how many times we thought about that. The innocence of a child is not really built on strength. It's just a given. But an adult, its innocence and purity, it's based on strength. Nowadays, heroes are seen as... Vahid, can you read it really loud?
A person noted for courageous acts or nobility of character. A person who, in the opinion of others, has special achievements, abilities, or personal qualities, and is regarded as a role model or ideal.
Okay. So we had the hero in the mythological sense, and this is what our society has turned the hero into. You can turn it off again so we can look. He's just a person who's courageous, noble of character, in the opinion of others, has special achievements, abilities, personal qualities. The first one, thanks Shastri, looked like really the manifestation of God, right? This new definition is just a good guy, right? A hero is just a good guy. You know, he can be a firefighter, a policeman, he can be somebody who saved others, and that's our definition of a hero. Where do heroes come from? So help me out. Like, can you turn on the lights? So I think I jumped the next slide. So where does heroes come from?
Like literally, or
You can help me anyway.
I would say that a lot of times heroes come from our imagination.
Mm-hmm. Where else?
All walks of life.
Sorry?
All walks of life.
All walks of life. Yeah.
Great job.
Challenge or conflict.
Challenge, conflict. Necessity. That's a good one. Necessity, challenge. What else?
Strife and calamity.
Calamity? What else? So you were saying that when necessity shows up, the best of people can come out, right? And the worst of people too, right?
Faith.
Fate.
Faith.
Faith. Faith, yeah. What else? Well, by the time I'm finishing this, we'll see that many of us, or maybe all of us, have the potential to become superheroes. I know it's hard to believe, right? But it's true. Some people are smiling, and it's okay. So, okay, let's see here. Guya, can you read this for me?
When righteousness is weak and faith and uprightness exalts in pride, then my spirit arises on earth. For the salvation of those who are good, for the destruction of evil men, for the fulfillment of the kingdom of righteousness, I come to this work from age to age. Krishna.
Actually, I misspelled this when I was typing. I come to this world. I saw this like in different. Please turn it on, Pastor. So when righteousness is weak and faint, and unrighteousness exalts in pride, then my spirit arises on earth for the salvation of those who are good, for the destruction of evil in men, for the fulfillment of the kingdom of righteousness. I come to this world from age to age. Who said that? Krishna. You guys know what Krishna means? Can anybody help me out? Anybody? No. Krishna means the anointed one. Is there any other prophet that has the same name? Christ. It's exactly the same thing as Christ. Krishna and Christ the words look similar, and they actually mean the same thing. So when you hear people saying Hare Krishna on the streets, that's basically the same thing. But people say, yeah, that's a different one. It came from a different place. It looked different. So Krishna said that at a moment of special need, what happens in the world? What does God do? He manifests himself. And he says there's some specific circumstances for him to manifest himself. What are these specific circumstances? Can you help me out? This is really important.
When the Death Star is about to shoot your planet.
Exactly. When there is something so important, somebody talked about faith, and I heard faith, and when the opportunity arises, and then that person, that specific person arises, but in this specific situation, it's the Spirit of God. It's the Holy Spirit. Is what we call upon when we say Ya Baha'u'llah. Especially when we say Ya Baha'u'llah and we mean it. When we have trust, when we have faith, and we really believe that that specific word will call upon the forces, these latent forces of the universe. Most people don't believe in it, right? Abdu'l-Baha said, the name of Jesus had that. He even said, Ha had this power in the past. Many different words were given a specific. If you read Harry Potter, it has that. If you hear about abracadabra, you say, like, how is that possible? Is that just mythology? Is that just a story? Or is this really true? Do you guys, I wonder if the youth here, did you ever get an opportunity to read passages from the Dawnbreakers? Did anybody read passages of the Dawnbreakers to you? Yeah? You read the whole book? Oh, okay, good. Do you guys remember when those guys who were inside the fort were about to leave? They would say, open the gates, and then they would call upon some words. Does anybody here remember what were those words?
Ya Sahibul Zaman.
Ya Sahibul Zaman. What does that mean?
O Lord of the Age.
Yeah. O Lord of Age, O Lord of Time. And then what happened with the thousands of soldiers on the other side? They ran away. They ran away from really big guys like Hulk and Superman, who were with a cape and with a huge sword. You guys have no idea my disappointment when I saw the sword of Mullah Hussein at the archives.
Hey, it's a nice sword, okay?
No, it's a nice sword. I wanted to take it home. Well, like, I expected it to be a really huge sword.
Yeah.
It wasn't that big.
The force was with him.
The force was with him. Because, like, there was one person, there was a bayonet, there was a tree, and there was a little sword. And I was like, holy moly, really? Somebody had help. So, when you think about this, like, who are we? Like, we have built these people and this imagery to compensate for our lack of faith and trust in the spiritual powers. So what does this image show you, apart that he's really good looking, handsome guy?
It's a difficult
Yeah.
He stands in the face of adversity.
Yeah, and he's really strong, like physically strong.
Oh, yeah, he's yoked.
He's physically strong. And in this, we can turn it on, turn the lights on. That in this kind of situation, this is what we need. We need muscle strength, because this is what's going to help us, right? I'm going to show you, okay, this is a little bit more elaborate of a hero. This is Luke Skywalker. Is he really buff? Like, he goes to the gym every day and has lots of protein? He eats well and stuff?
After Dagobah, yeah.
Huh?
After Dagobah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
the workout.
Yeah, he's working out, really. Not that working out is not good, like we need to, but like, is that how the strength, like, is that the strength we need to really change the world? Like, we'll keep this, like, I'm gonna go to the next. Then, you know, I really like the wisdom of the Yoda. When I think of this, when you think of Yoda, and he is the master that gives all of these great advices to Luke. Like, really, when you expect somebody to give you wisdom, is that the kind of face you expect to see? It's very interesting how Star Wars was built and how careful they were not to overemphasize certain things instead of others. It's really short, really small, has the biggest ears I ever seen, and doesn't look especially cute. But he represents in this story, and he became in our mythological imagery like the symbol of knowledge and wisdom. He says, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. If you would look at this from a Baha'i perspective, like, how would you connect this with anything else we have learned all of these years as Baha'is?
Love is a light that dwelleth not in a heart possessed by fear.
Thank you. That's very nice. Can you say that again very loud?
Love is a light that dwelleth not in a heart possessed by fear. It's from the Seven Valleys.
Can anybody else help, like, work on these passages? On this specific passage? Quote? Mace, can you turn the lights on? How does that apply to our daily lives? I really need your help on this.
When we think about prejudice and discrimination that many populations are facing, especially in this day and age, its root is in fear and kind of follows that flow. So that's an example of how this concept is unfortunately manifesting itself in our day-to-day life, which means we need to combat that with the stronger path of love.
Yeah, so this is very good because she's giving a real life example. So we have a situation where some people, I'm not going to mention any names, and I asked nobody here, like anybody, not to mention any names because it's very clear that some fearmongers and fear, like what is their strategy to take over our lives? Is by doing what?
Increasing the fears.
Increasing fear.
Controlling.
Yeah. Controlling, but through fear. Then they create fear, and then what happens?
We're paralyzed.
Fear leads to anger. This was taken from the messages of the manifestations of God, or from different religions of the past, and they put this into the film. Fear leads to anger. You can totally see this. You talk to people and you say, they're after you. These are bad people.
They're going to cross the border. They're going to come get you. They are for different race. They are for different nationality. They're coming after you. And that leads to anger. And eventually it leads to hate. And hate is what leads us to suffering. You see, this is the knowledge of religion kind of squeezed into a little dialogue between a green, big-eared old man who is like 1 meter tall with Luke Skywalker. And out of a sudden, all that beauty that most people don't want to see in religion, that nobody wants to talk about because religion is old school and it's not important, is presented in a way that people can understand. It's presented in a fashion that young people can connect to. And they can say, I can actually see that in my life. We can actually see this in the US or in Brazil where I live, in Africa or in Turkey or in Iran, of all places, right? So you see all of these. I can go on about each one of these great like heroes that were created in history. Can you guys see? This is Neo from Matrix. We could talk for hours about that story. But I want to talk a little bit about Lord of the Rings. Because Lord of the Rings has a special place in my heart, and I think it has a special place in the heart of many people. And you will, like, if you pay attention, you will understand how important Frodo is in this story. Did all the youth here watch Lord of the Rings? No? Did you guys watch it? You read it? Did anybody read? How many people watch Lord of the Rings? Okay, good. So it's not going to be like, going to be talking about something that...
It's been a while.
I was scared a little bit. But like, you know, Lord of the Rings had so many secrets hidden in it. And Tolkien, when he wrote this, he studied deeply the mythology of the Scandinavians, which wasn't different from the mythology of the Indians or the Iranians or the native people of Brazil. It's the same mythology. Different words, different characters, but they were telling the same story. Okay, Frodo needs to take this ring to be destroyed. He's chosen to do it because he has a special mission in this world. Do you guys remember how is the physical appearance of Frodo?
He's about the size of a child.
Loud, please.
He's about the size of a human child.
He's the size of a human child. What else?
Hairy feet.
He has huge hairy feet. What does that mean? Is it just there because hairy feet are super cute? Do you guys think hairy feet are cute? I'm gonna shave mine. Yeah, shave your toe. So, hairy feet and the body of a child. What does that mean? Think of the symbolical value of this.
He's impotent. He can't do anything.
He's impotent.
He's well grounded and innocent.
He's well grounded
And innocent.
and innocent. Exactly. See, the feet of an adult is what you need to make the journey. But your heart must be the heart of a child. You must keep the heart of a child.
I really thought about this.
I wouldn't give a talk, it was... No, like I was thinking, when I was talking to Nason, I was like, man, I have to remove so much stuff I wanted to share with you guys, and I have to do it in a way that I have like younger people and older people, some people who are really into it, and some people who are really probably never watched this, but I really want you guys to follow me on this because I'm going to tell you something. An average human being on this planet lives 28,000 days. 28,000 days. The first 3,600 days, you're a child on your first 10 years of your life. The next 3,600 days, you turn 20. Basically, on the first 3,600 days, you have no clue what you're doing here. You're trying to figure out who you are and how you connect to your mother and your father and your friends. And you're trying to learn language. You're trying to learn how to read and write. Those 28,000 days of an average, like some people might live longer, 30,000 days, sometimes 35,000 days. Some people don't last that long. But we have an amazing opportunity every single day we wake up. And I'll talk about this later on. But I know that I have to be quick, like how many more minutes I have? Don't say 2.
10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. I'm sorry to be fast. So, Frodo, he has to take the ring. He was chosen because of his heart, because of his feet, not because he's hairy. Not because of the hairy feet. No special, it just looks ugly, but like you see, I have another picture of how hairy they look. You see this? And he manicured it. Very nice script. So it's really nicely taken care of parts of it. But you see, like different cultures have different styles. Some girls might find this attractive, right? You never know. Exactly. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. But he really took care of his nails. So when you think of it, you see this little child is crossing the world to have this ring destroyed because he knows that this ring has special powers, that if they fall in the wrong hands, what can happen, Shastri?
Bad things.
Bad things. Like great powers in the hands of bad people, you have Iran. No? Syria. No, sorry. You have some other places, right? Now, I work with issues related to Iran, so this comes to my mind. Unfortunately, I can't think. Huh?
Nuclear power in the eyes or in the hands
Of a chubby, spoiled kid in North Korea. Right?
It's not just bad people, though. It's even good people who don't have the sufficient purity of heart to be able to bear the burden of the ring.
Because?
Because this absolute power, that just because those little promptings of the ego get taken over by the ring.
So we're going to talk about those promptings of the ego in the next slide. What does Abdu'l-Baha says about this? Please, somebody read this really loud. Help me out.
Anger, passion, ignorance, prejudice, greed, envy, contentious, jealousy, suspicion, prevent man from ascending to the realms of holiness, imprisoning him in the claw of self and the cage of egotism.
What is Abdu'l-Baha saying? Brittany, can you help me out again and read it once more?
Anger, passion, ignorance, prejudice, greed, envy, covetousness, jealousy, and suspicion prevent man from ascending to the realms of holiness, imprisoning him in the claws of self and the cage of egotism.
Anger, passion. Like say passion nowadays, people are like, oh, passion is good. Passion is good. Passion comes from pathos. Pathos in Greek means disease. Pathology is the study of disease. When you are passionate about somebody, you get passionate because there is like a story, like can we turn on the lights? There's a story that explains that. You know why we need to get passionate about somebody? Passion, because our heart is protected. Our heart, it's like fort, like a fortress. It's protected. Not everybody can get in because it's a very sensitive place. It's a very delicate place in there. So we need to protect it. Passion is a disease that makes the how do you say I have to say it in English in a way, like it makes the guards of that fortress to kind of feel a little dizzy, and they're not really into working at that moment when you get passionate, and it allows the other person to crawl in, to get in. Sorry?
Compromise? Is that the English word?
No. Basically, what happens is that when you're passionate, those protections you have from getting hurt, they're removed, and people can get into your heart. And if they don't mean well, they can really hurt you. That's why people get hurt. So, passion, it's important but passion cannot last long. Passion is a process that's supposed to last a little bit so that you open your heart, somebody comes in, and then you build love. And that's what is really important. Whoever trusts passion only will always get hurt and will be hurt forever. Abdu'l-Baha warns us to be careful with anger, passion, ignorance, prejudice, greed. Prejudice and greed, it seems like to be like the most normal thing nowadays. Nobody even questions it anymore. Envy, covetousness, jealousy, and suspicion prevent man from ascending to the realms of holiness, imprisoning him in the claws of self and in the cage of egotism. So, when Frodo gets the ring, and he's supposed to take this ring to this mountain to be burnt, to be destroyed, he gets in the hands of this guy. This guy shows up. Can anybody say, remember what this guy keeps saying the whole movie?
Precious.
My precious. Give me the ring. My precious. Was he always like this? No, he was once like this. But something really bad happened to him, and he ended up like this. Why didn't Frodo get rid of Smeagol? Oh, Gollum. Why?
He needed him.
He needed him for what?
To show him the way.
To show him the way.
To know that he could be saved himself.
Yes, but Smeagol, and this is my interpretation, can we turn the lights on? Smeagol is a way of saying he is my ego. Smeagol is there to show the way, to protect in a way, because he knows the paths in the jungles, in the forests, in the caves, on those places, on those valleys. But he needed to be under control. Like each one of us, we can't make the journey without the ego. The ego is part of our nature. This film shows that if we, for a moment, fall for the small talk of the ego, what happens to us? What happens to us? What happens to him?
We become ugly.
We become ugly. I think we can get ugly anyway.
We lose our way.
Huh?
We lose our way.
Yeah, we're doomed. We lose our way. And what happens is the purpose of our existence in this world, Baha'u'llah says, the biggest challenge we have in this world is the challenge of manifesting potential. Each one of us is a jewel. Each one of us is a jewel. Like sometimes when I have friends of mine come to me and say, oh, you're always talking about God. And can you prove God? And I say, I love that proving God because there's so many ways you can do it, but I really know that none of that is real. But I like playing with words. So I just say, I have one way of proving God that is really interesting. God is one. God is the only one that exists in the universe. When you see digital 1 and 0, that started in Islam. 0 comes from Islam. Algebra, it comes from the numbers we use, all the numbers, Arabic numbers that were created. The whole concept of 0 and 1. 0 and 1 that digital is basically the basis of creation. 1 being God and all creation being 0. Because nothing that is eternal can be considered 1. Everything that's fleeting, that comes into existence and then disappears, it's considered to be 0. So creation is the combination between 1 and 0. I don't even know why I'm telling you this.
Proving God.
We're talking about
Proving God.
proving God. So basically when I was talking, God is one. And God being one, there is one way that he can prove himself to us all the time. That is, every single thing he creates, every single moment is new, it's never been repeated in the past. So you, the way you are, never in the history of mankind we had somebody like you, and never in the future. You will never be repeated in this universe. None of us. That specific combination is unique. And you know what that means? First, that God is creating all the time. There is no machine creating. There is God here, now, creating things all the time. And every single thing is new. That said, each one of the people in this room has a special gift that cannot be repeated in the future and never existed in the past. So your contribution to this world will never be repeated. If you don't manifest it in this life, that is lost. And that is the greatest sin in the world.
You say that again.
I don't even remember what I said.
I want the young kids to hear that.
Yeah, no, just kidding. Like whatever you have, because in this society, when you try to make things mechanical, what happens is you try to convince people to buy things to be things. And it's super dangerous because you externalize and you say that you were not given by God what you need to perform and to be in this world and to be of importance. But what Baha'u'llah says and the other prophets of God say is that you have been given something special that is only yours. When somebody kills himself, he's denying not only himself the opportunity of manifesting greatness in this world, but he's denying humanity of listening to the song he has in his chest. Every human being has a song in his chest. And 99% of humans in this day and age don't sing that song. It's a song that each one of you can only sing. It's a talent that each one of you can only manifest. If you're in high school, in your school, and somebody puts you down and say, oh, you're like this and that, really, he's just reflecting society. If you externally don't manifest what the person expects, of course he will try to put you down.
I think that's another thing about heroes is that they're not afraid to be unique.
Yeah, we are unique. We are unique. And this is what Baha'u'llah came for, to allow us to manifest those jewels that are hidden inside of us. Make no mistake, jewels are not found on the floor. How do you find jewels? You go into a mine. You make a hole. You break stone. You work hard day and night until you get to that gem. And then when you find the gem, you say, voila, I have it. In French, no. What happens? You have to get it, work on it, polish it, design it, and then it becomes a beautiful gem. And then you say, like, everybody in this room is gold or silver or a diamond or a pearl? No. Each person has its own capacity. But we are taught outside that if you don't look like the other person, if you don't behave like the other person, you're not worthy. So, in this revelation, there is no place for envy, because we understand that we have something special to present to the world. Another thing, Baha'u'llah promises that he will send hosts, armies of people to protect. In its way, Frodo, he finds angels and angels and angels. Friends, please remember, there are hosts, armies of angels, waiting in line in between heaven and earth, waiting to help each one of you when you arise to do something good for others, when you arise to serve the faith. Armies. Your grandparents who are not here anymore, your great-grandparents, people who were in the other world probably had nothing else to do, but they said, let me help this guy out because he wants to do good. We have guardian angels. There's a book by Mirza Abul Fazl on angels. When you read that, you go, how didn't I see this? We have so much in this revelation about these forces that move us. Baha'u'llah says we are like fish in the sea. Fish that don't realize that we have water around us. And Baha'u'llah says that water is the love of God. The grace and the mercy of God. If it's removed for 1 second, all the fish will die. But fish are, going. Just say, like, how about the water? It says, like, there's no water. What are you talking about? They don't know. We don't know a situation without water. We are immersed in water. 100% of the time, that water is the love of God. We are breathing it. We are a miracle. But we don't understand this. If we would understand the moment we live in, the mercy we have, like the bounties we have, we would be jumping out and screaming on the streets and thanking God for who we are and for what we have been given. But we don't realize this, and we take for granted. Okay, I wanted to do this, but like it's too much. I'm sorry, I just made this too long again. But I always say I'm going to fix this. I'm going to send this to you, anybody who wants this. This is the path of the hero. And it's the path of every one of you, but especially of the children and the youth. You have the opportunity to do great, great things. To be the honor of your family, to be the honor of this country, and to be the honor of mankind by rendering great services. But only if you choose to do so. To be a hero. To tap into that amazing force that is latent in this world. Only if we choose to do so. Not because I'm special, but because I want to connect. And when I connect, the drop turns into an ocean. The moth turns into the ego. The last one, please, somebody read this out loud.
It is in our power, should we wish it, to enable a speck of floating dust to generate, in less than the twinkling of an eye, suns of infinite, of unimaginable splendor, to cause a dewdrop to develop into vast and numberless oceans, to infuse into every letter such force as to empower it to unfold all the knowledge of past and future ages. Baha'u'llah.
I had more, but like, I don't think I should continue. Thank you very much for your patience and your attention. And for the young ones, I really hope that in the future I'll see your names, not because of your names being written somewhere, but you know, Baha'u'llah says that he writes those names in these stones of chrysolite. I don't even know what that means, but he writes them in a place that is, you can't erase it. Thank you.